Thank you. Yes, well, Chris Wolfock's speech today, entitled How Public Speaking Changed the World. It's the first project of this manual here. I don't know what manuals that Toastmasters do. This one is published regarding public relations, so it can go into professional sphere as well as just doing it as a hobby, I suppose. But you've got here essentially Goodwill Speech is project number 1. There are a number of different projects you get throughout these manuals. Chris's aim is to provide a goodwill speech for Toastmasters, promoting Toastmasters, but not in a salesy kind of a way, but in what kind of Toastmasters means to him. And I've just spoken to Chris now. He says he's very excited about the speech, and it's going to be absolutely fantastic. So please welcome Chris Wolfock.
The legendary science fiction writer Isaac Asimov wrote, "Violence is the last refuge of the incompetent." Why? Because words have power. Words are far more effective in bringing about change than violence has ever been. As a public speaker, you have the opportunity to change the world. But none of us are born with these skills. We have to practice, learn, and develop them. At clubs like Toastmasters International, we have the opportunity to learn and develop these skills, and thus we have the opportunity to go out there and change the world. But don't just take my word for it. Let's look at some examples from history. And this is what we call signposting in PR, because we all know exactly where this speech is going now. Let's start in the 1940s, a year into the Second World War. Britain is broken. Dunkirk has been a colossal military disaster, 11,000 dead, 40,000 captured. Britain needs a hero. On the 4th of June, 1940, the Prime Minister, Winston Churchill, walked into the House of Commons to deliver his report. In front of the amassed crowd, he laid out his vision for Britain. We shall prove ourselves once again able to defend our island home, to ride out the storm of war and outlive the menace of tyranny, if necessary for years, if necessary alone. We shall go on to the end. We shall fight them in France. We shall fight them on the seas and oceans. We shall fight them with growing confidence and growing strength in the air. We shall fight them on the beaches, whatever the cost may be. We shall fight them on the landing grounds. We shall fight them on fields and streets. We shall never surrender. There can be no doubt, after a thorough study of Churchill's character, that the guy was an absolute arsehole. He was rude, he was petulant, and he was capricious. He was not a nice man. But all that is forgotten because of his public speaking skills. He inspired a generation to fight on against and eventually overcome Nazi Germany. His oratory paved the way for us to win the Second World War. Public speaking had changed the world. In 1962, the world was once again at war. This wasn't a war that could be seen, but one that could be felt by its chill. The Cold War was upon us. John F. Kennedy needed to unite his country behind him, to unite the world, or at least the Western world, to overcome the Soviet Union. He asked for this support in his inauguration speech. And so, my fellow Americans, ask not what your country can do for you. Ask what you can do for your country. To my fellow citizens of the world, I say, ask not what America will do for you. Ask what together we can do for the freedom of man. In a speech in Houston, he went on to lay out his vision for how the West would win the space race. This city of Houston, this state of Texas, this country of the United States was not built by those who waited and wanted to look behind us. The eyes of the world now look to space, to the moon and to the planets beyond, and ask, will they be governed by the hostile flag of conquest or by the banner of freedom and peace? We choose to go to the moon. We choose to do it in this decade and do the other things, not because they are easy, but because they are hard. 7 years later, and man first walked on the moon. It was one small step for man, but one giant step for mankind. Kennedy's words inspired a generation to put aside their differences and reach for the stars. Because of his oratory, man landed on the moon, and public speaking had once again changed the world. Finally, in 1963, the world was a very racist place. Peter Griffith, the Conservative MP, had just been elected to Parliament with the campaign, "If you want a nigger for a neighbour, vote Liberal or Labour." But some people were brave enough to speak out about it, and no voice was heard as loud as Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. On the steps of the Lincoln Memorial, he laid out his vision for a fairer world. I have a dream that one day the red hills of Georgia, the sons of former slaves and the sons of former slave owners will be able to sit at the table of brotherhood. I have a dream that one day my little children will be judged not by the colour of their skin, but by the content of their character. And I have this dream today. A year later, and the much-needed civil rights advanced to Congress, and Dr. King became the youngest ever recipient of the Nobel Peace Prize. Once again, public speaking had changed the world. It would be an insult to the memories of the people who died bringing about this change to suggest that words alone overcome these evils. But the words and the people behind them inspired a generation to go out and achieve this change and take it for their own. And all it took was one single human being with great public speaking skills. As public speakers, we have the chance to change the world. But just like none of these people came out of the womb with the ability to change it, we were not born with it either. But at organisations like Toastmasters, we have the chance to learn these skills and therefore the chance to go out and change the world. That is the true value of Toastmasters.
Thank you, Chris, for our third mellifluous speech of the